true wisdom begins with, deep wisdom begins with experiencing this thing called emptiness in a direct way. In the same way that we experience, water as wet or flame is hot. Nobody tells us that. We don't need our logic. We stick our hand in the fire, ouch, right? So that's a direct experience. We talk about the direct perception or experience of emptiness. The problem with that is that how do you have a perception of a lack? Or how do you touch, taste, smell, see, hear a lack of something, that it's not there? Closest thing you get to is somehow the time when I walked out of my friend's house and I expected to see my car and it wasn't there. It had been stolen. So that was like a flash of seeing a lack. No car. Before all this other stuff rushed in. Reasons why there was no car. Oh, it was stolen, before rational thought kind of takes over. You can't through the sense perceptions, touch, taste, hearing, you can't experience emptiness directly. They say that they describe it as a yogic experience which happens in deep meditation. Okay? So the question is, give 3 reasons why why it's not necessary for the perfection of giving, and the other 4 to come before one has the realization of emptiness. And there's a little bit of a trick here, because when he says realization of emptiness, he's not actually talking about direct perception of emptiness. He's talking about the reasons why it's not necessary. Nope, cancel that. Let me just go forward. It has to do with the different types of realizations, the motivation for the realization, and the result of the realization. So the first one, it says, as Master Shankarashita has pointed out. So when you're reading, you can look for the little thing that says, as Master Shankarashita says, and you'll get the answer. The first 5 do not need to come before one can have the realization of emptiness that comes through either learning about it or contemplating on it. Okay, so he's talking, you don't have to perfect the other 5 in order to, or you don't have to work with the other 5 in order to have an intellectual understanding of this thing we're calling emptiness. You don't need the first 5 even to gain a deep experience and spiritual conviction about emptiness. If this were the case, you'd have to have the 5 to gain deep experience and conviction about things like the fact of impermanence. Okay. What that means is that you don't, this is saying that if you had to go through the other 5 to have a spiritual conviction about emptiness, then you would also have to have the other 5 to have a spiritual conviction, to be convinced of, to have confidence in, a belief in things like the truth of impermanence, the truth of dependent origination, and the like. So he's still talking about the intellectual, a deep intellectual understanding of emptiness. And then the third one, you don't have to have the 5 before one gains special insight, which comes from meditation, which means the direct perception of emptiness. Here's the technical way to go it for you Buddha heads. Because persons of the 2 lower way tracks, listeners and self-made Buddhas, are able to realize thusness without them coming first. In other words, if what you're thinking about, if what you're attending to, what your goal is to reach nirvana, is to get yourself out of suffering, which we say is not it's the penultimate goal. It's not the ultimate goal, right? It's the one that comes before. If that's what you're interested in, then you don't need to use the 5 perfections to get the other 5 perfections to get there. Okay? You can have the direct perception of emptiness and not be on the Bodhisattva path. Right? Yeah? We like to say, we like to give the impression that the Bodhisattva path is the only way to do it. It's not the only way to do it. Okay. Question 3. So, why does the opening verse say that we do have to practice the first 5 in order to achieve the 6th? This is the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. Principal topic of the guide is how to achieve full enlightenment, which involves removing the obstacles to omniscience. Reaching this requires that one be enriched with limitless masses of merit, which can only be done if the other 5 come first. We will talk, later on about what the heck omniscience means. We don't have time to do it now. But when you're talking about omniscience, omniscience is one of the things that distinguishes a person. I mean, if you are going to end suffering, not only for yourself, but for all beings, then you need to know how to help them. You need omniscience. You can't just kind of be in your own mind. You need to be in their minds as well. Okay? And again, your mind, my mind, omniscience, what all that stuff means. We'll do more of that. Okay. Second verse. We accept the truths as being 2. The one which is deceptive and the one which is ultimate. Not included in the reading for some reason, but the rest of the verse. The ultimate is not something which is an object of the mind. The mind is something said to be deceptive. Maybe that's in reading in next week, but it's not including here. So the question is, name the 2 truths. Are they different? If not, why are they called, are they different kinds of truths? If not, why are they called truths? What object is divided into the 2 truths? 2 truths are? Deceptive and ultimate. There you go. They are not are they 2 different kinds of truths? No. Deceptive is called truth only because ignorance takes its object to exist in truth, which means self-existently. Ultimate truth is, I'm reading this because it's an answer key thing, but we'll talk about it in 5 minutes. Ultimate truth is an ultimate reality, and this is why it's called a truth. Deceptive and ultimate truth are 2 broad and all-inclusive divisions of reality itself, and so they are more accurately described as the 2 realities. Okay. A couple of things, and I'll hit this again next week. It always kind of surprises me when they translate that truth as deceptive truth. Although most do. Most of the translations do. Alan Wallace calls it conventional, but most of them, including Geshe Michael and Lama Marut, use deceptive. The reason I have trouble with it is because if you say deceptive truth, then we think that truth is somehow wrong. And that if we can just get out of this truth, conventional truth or reality, then we'll be okay. That is not the case, okay? They call it deceptive because we think it is the sum total of reality. We think what you see is what you get and there ain't nothing else to it. Or to say it the way we've been talking about it, we believe that this is a self-existing independent object, and this is a self-existing independent subject, and occasionally the twain meet. You know, occasionally we run into each other and you know, and things happen. That's deceptive truth. It's deceptive because it deceives us, because we think that's the total, that we think that that's the way things are, okay? We don't see, we think that what we feel, see, touch, smell, etc. is what there is and all that there is. We don't see, because we can't with our senses, that it exists always and only as an interaction between subject and object, as we've been talking about all night. Yeah? Okay. Ultimate reality is what's missing from our view of reality. That's all it is. You cannot have ultimate reality without conventional reality. If there is no object here, then there is no emptiness of the object, right? You're not going to leave conventional behind. Sometimes we call it the world of appearances, or the reality of appearances. You know, what we live in. And except for, you know, when I was mentioning that brief yogic experience, never, not as a Buddha, not as anybody, not as a suffering being, sosokyewo in Tibetan, never mind. You know, not as a suffering being, not as an enlightened being, not as a being in nirvana, none of those things. You are never going to be without the world of appearances. Thank goodness, because the world that, you know, if there were not a world of appearances, it would be completely inert. Okay? So ultimate reality and conventional reality are interdependent. In order to have emptiness of something, the lack of it being what we think it is, there has to be something that lacks being what we think it is. And in order for the thing to exist, in order for there to be a conventional reality, there has to be the interdependence of subject and object. Wow, some heads are nodding. That's really good. Okay. Yeah.
So, deceptive reality is the reality, as I know it, that appears to a deceived mind. But a Buddha's mind isn't deceived. So, what's deceptive reality for Buddha?
That's what we call the world of appearances. It's the same thing, though, and that's the problem. It's not as though now there's a third reality, which is the Buddha's world that contains objects, right? So that's why I have trouble with this idea of calling it deceptive reality, because we think that's the name for this thing. And then when you're not deceived by it, it becomes some other thing. It's the same thing, right? It's the same reality, and you're not deceived by it. They don't give it another name, though. At least as well, actually, they do give it another name. They call it the world of appearances. But it's the same reality. Make sense? Okay.
So then the shift is in the relationship that the Buddha has with the reality versus the one we have.
You could say that. I mean, no. Well, see, hopefully this won't make it more confusing. A Buddha takes conventional reality, a Buddha's reality brings those two together. And they are one reality. So traditionally, scripturally, what we say is that a Buddha is in conventional reality and ultimate reality at the same time. And we think, if you're like me, we think to ourselves, well, how the hell do they do that? What they do, what has happened in their mind stream, let's say, their mind, is that these two reality, first of all, that they are aware that there is such a thing as something other than just the world of appearances, and that they've brought these two together. Right? So I think for a Buddha, I could go on for another 10 minutes or 2 hours about that, because we talk about the 4 bodies of a Buddha and all kinds of stuff that have to do with appearance and emanation versus wisdom. There's a whole thing. But basically, that's how it goes. It's kind of a shorthand way of saying it. Okay? So yeah. I'm going to move to the last question, and then we'll come back to that. What is the special quality of ultimate truth as described by the great Gyaltsab Je? So we are now talking about this lack of self-existence view of reality. It is that object which is such that if you realize it directly, it functions to allow you to finish off every impurity and reach nirvana and enlightenment within a specified period of time of this direct perception. Okay. Basically, it means that if you have the direct perception of emptiness, if you have this yogic experience, and the reason why we call it yogic is because you're not experiencing it through the senses. And by the way, mind, I mentioned touch, taste, all those. But for the Tibetans and the Indians, I think, thought, there is a 6th sense which is thought. Okay? So this lack is not something that you can experience through the senses. You have to experience it some other way if you're going to do it directly, like the wetness. Okay? So they say that the only way that you can really experience it is when you get to these certain very, very deep levels of meditation. When you have that experience, you not only have the ability, but it is actually unavoidable that you will, over some period of time, end suffering for yourself and for all beings. How long that period of time is different texts say different things. Some say 16 lifetimes. Some say it's not that one is right and the other is wrong. It could be that it will take 16 lifetimes to get to the point where you see, that's all, that's it. Or 7, or maybe tomorrow, or the moment after. And I think we'll end there. I forgot to do prayers. I completely forgot to do prayers.
This is a new style.
I even have a big note up here that says prayers. Let's do closing prayers. Juan, will you do the honors?
Sashi
Puki Jukshin Metok Trom Rirabling Shin Yande Gyanpadi Sange Shingdu Mikte Uwargi Drokun Namdak Shinla Drupasho Idam Guru Ratna Manalakam Niryatayami Di Kyewokum Sunam Yashe Tsotsok Shing Sunam Yashe Lejue Dampa Kuni Topasho. Thank you very much. And